Okay, it's time for Savannah Lexicon, folks. I hope you enjoyed Savannah Rising this morning. This is Wayne Waters, your hopefully genial host here at Savannah Lexicon. I do appreciate you tuning in this morning. It's going to be a good show. We are going to have Tom Kohler here this morning, who is with Savannah Citizen Advocacy. And that's a laudable organization that does good work here in Savannah, and I know that you want to hear about that. He's got a lot of interesting things to say, no doubt. Let me get done with some of the housekeeping that we have to get into first. If you are a first-time listener, I do want you to know Savannah Lexicon is a show designed to inform the listener about important social, political, and cultural issues that shape Savannah, as well as about opportunities to experience things in and around this beautiful city that might bring an added measure of grace and joy to your life. You are, of course, listening to WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. And again, this is Savannah Lexicon. Now, listen up, because this is so very important. I want you to hear it. The general disclaimer. The viewpoints expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of WRUU, its license holder, or its staff. All right, so let's get to it. Tom, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here this morning.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Appreciate that. Let's just start out with this, if we may, and I'm sure a lot of listeners know about the organization already, but just to give a sort of a nutshell version, just tell us what Chatham's Savannah organization, your organization, the Chatham Savannah Citizen Advocacy organization, is all about, what your mission is.
Sure. Well, thanks. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me. Well, Chatham Savannah Citizen Advocacy is a small 501c3 organization. We're 40 years old next year, and we work with a staff of 3, myself, Ashley O'Brien, who's been with us for 20 years, who really anchors our organization, and then George Seaborough, who's been with us for 3 years, and George and I spend most of our day out in our community, meeting people, learning about people, and bringing people toward the idea of citizen advocacy. Citizen advocacy is an idea that depends on local people being interested and willing to meet someone that they probably would not otherwise meet because of the way we sort of stay separate from one another. Mm-hmm. And so we're asking individual people to meet other individual people and find ways to understand, respond to, and represent one another's interests. In the work that we do, one person in the match between the two people, we're relationship building. One person will have a developmental disability and will many times be someone who is maybe not living as good a life as we would hope they would. Mm-hmm. And then the other person is someone who has good roots in Savannah, knows how Savannah works. And Savannah, like most towns, is as much a who-you-know town as a what-you-know town, right?
Yep,
and so we look for people that have big networks of people that are well-rooted in Savannah, people that have people who have a kind of a proactive idea that things can be better, and they want to be part of making things better. And so we match people up in lots of different kinds of voluntary relationships with one another.
Excellent. That sounds like a very, very worthwhile endeavor, no doubt about it. I do appreciate it. And just quickly, your website is Savannah Citizen Advocacy, I believe, is it right? Yeah, .org. Mm-hmm. .org, not .com. So Savannah Citizen Advocacy.org. So lots of information there. All right, good.
Coordinator, so it's 3 staff and a board of 15 people, and we raise money locally, and we've been very, very blessed over the past 40 years to have people that have stuck with us as fundraisers, sometimes people who've stuck with us for 30 years.
Wow.
So we have that base of funding, and then we continue to receive some support from the Georgia Advocacy Office based out of Atlanta. So we're a little local nonprofit organization with a 40-year history. We've always had an office downtown, so we have a small business office here. An awful lot of the work we do gets done in coffee shops and over people's coffee tables in their home and over lunch tables because our work really involves meeting people one at a time and trying to learn about who they are.
Yeah.
And that comes in two different ways. We spend some of our time meeting individual people who have a disability, who many times, as I say, are living a pretty hard life.
Yeah.
Not everybody who has a disability lives a hard life, but
Right.
many people do. Quite frankly, because of kind of prejudice in this culture.
Sure.
And so we meet people one at a time. We try to hear their stories as they understand themselves. We try to look and see what their everyday life looks like. We try to talk with people about what they want their life to look like. How could your life be different? What are the things you'd like to do more of, that you'd like to do more of in your life? And we try to notice we try to look and see if there things are going on with people that are, quite frankly, just unfortunate. People are being poorly treated. So we meet people one at a time. We try to learn those things. We write a little story for ourselves about the person that helps us clarify. We take the story back to the person and say, this is what we heard you say. This is what how we are kind of looking at things. Does this feel right to you? And the person helps us shape and sharpen the story. We use that story then to ask ourselves the question, well, if this is the person that we've met, if this is the story that they feel good about us telling about who they are and what they want in their life, then let's do some thinking about who would we want to tell the story to.
Right.
And then we begin to think about, we're looking for someone, what sort of talents, what sort of skills, what sort of value base, what sort of time available, what sort of identity would we want the potential advocate to have. Mm-hmm. And so we develop some ideas about that. And then we just say, well, who do we know that looks like that? Who do we know that's that kind of person? And we make a little list. And then we call people one at a time and ask if we can have a cup of coffee. Okay. And then we meet with folks and share the citizen advocacy story as an idea if they are not familiar with the idea. And then after we share the idea, if they're interested in the idea, then we begin to talk with them about the individual person that brought us into the conversation with them. And as those conversations go on, if people are interested and feel like this is an idea they'd like to maybe participate in, then we go back to the person who has a disability. We talk to them about who the person we've met is and why we think there might be a match. If both people are interested, we bring people together a couple of times to just learn about each other.
Right.
And if people in that opportunity to learn about each other kind of face to face, if people feel like they'd like to take the next step, then I get out of the middle, so to speak, or we get out of the middle. The two people are matched up, and then they begin to figure out ways to get to know each other, take action on each other's behalf, and really create a relationship with one another. So the work is always focused on individual people.
Right.
It's always the experience of inviting someone to take another person's life seriously, and we think about that on both sides of that coin. I mean, both people in the relationship need to be thinking about each other and thinking about what the future might look like. So we think about we think about our work in terms of stories. How many different stories can be created about different ways that people here in Savannah can come closer at heart to one another, and how many different stories can we create where we see people sharing affection, sharing connection, and also working together to make things better for one another and make things better for Savannah.
Okay. Well, again, inarguably a laudable endeavor all the way around. Well, I'm not sure this is an easily answerable question, but I'll ask it anyway. And obviously the relationships vary tremendously, I'm sure, but is there some way to characterize in what ways I mean, of course, there's there's a purely social sense of it, of course, and that's one element. But it feels like, it sounds like that it endeavors to be something a bit more than that. Although that itself is extremely important. So I don't know. How would you reply to that idea?
Well, I think that's a great observation, actually, and an easy way for me to, I think, reply to that is to just describe the different roles that an advocate can be invited to play.
Yeah.
Spokesperson, friend, ally, monitor, mentor, representative payee, adoptive parent, legal guardian, opportunity maker, red tape cutter, crisis advocate. Okay. So, I mean, as you hear those descriptions, I think they support your point.
Exactly.
Which is the foundation of this is relational.
Sure.
But from the foundation grow different specific ways that people can take action on behalf of another person, and specific ways that people can question, challenge, and change what's going on or not going on behalf of a specific person.
Okay.
So, if it's okay, maybe I could just give a few examples that might.
You can, but let's hold off. We're getting right at the halfway point, so let's come back to that. I definitely want to hear that. I'm sure the listeners do as well. But hang on just for a minute with me, Tom, and we'll take a little bit of a break here. All right, so listeners, we'll have a brief musical interlude, and then we will not be going long. We have got considerably more to discuss with Tom here on Savannah Lexicon. We do appreciate you listening and hope you'll just hang with us for just a minute.
This portion of WRUU-LP Savannah Soundings programming is made possible by a grant from Sentient Bean, offering fair trade coffee, vegan and vegetarian food, and breakfast all day. Located at 13 East Park Avenue, across the street from the tennis courts at Forsyth Park. Our menu and special events listings can be found at sentientbean.com.
You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. This is Wayne, your host for Savannah Lexicon, and we're going to get back with Tom Kohler here in just a minute. I have a couple of things I want to say. One is to make sure you're aware that WRUU is now collecting items for the annual Savannah Soundings fundraising auction. And the auction will run from July 15th to July 30th, with proceeds going to WRUU to continue providing both great music and a voice for the Savannah community. Auction items range from gift cards to vouchers for products and services that are guaranteed to delight and surprise. Tell everyone you know about donating and about the auction. Donations can be made now. So for information on donations, contact Trent Kissinger at takissinger@gmail.com. That's takissinger@gmail.com. So we are very happy to have that going on. And so and I'll just mention that, of course, WRUU is is as a nonprofit is also, of course, generally looking for some donations from good folks out there who appreciate us, whether that be as individuals or as businesses. And so do look at our site, wruu.org, and check out the donation possibilities here as well. We do appreciate your attention to that too. Okay, so Tom, let's get back to it. You were first off, before you go into, and you were talking about giving some examples of these kinds of relationships. I certainly want to do that, but while we have a brief moment, just tell us again. Let's see. The website is Savannah Citizen Advocacy.org, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so folks can go on to the website for general information,
Mm-hmm.
further contact information, and all that sort of thing. So I did want to make sure we get that out there. But we were talking about these kinds of relationships between folks with citizen advocacy, and so you were going to kind of give some examples of that.
Sure. I'll give 3 examples, and all 3 of the examples will describe sort of different kinds of relationships.
Okay.
One example would be a woman named Mayola Mason matched with a woman named Tasha, and Miss Mason lives over in West Savannah. She's been an advocate for over 20 years. And Miss Mason has many wonderful characteristics, but one of her great characteristics is that she and her husband, John, raised 8 children successfully.
Wow.
So 8 out of 8 moved into the big world and have done great.
Nice.
So if you think about that.
That's an extraordinary accomplishment for
right.
anybody.
I mean, so when we met Tasha, and who had just graduated from public school and special ed system there, and who had a baby, was raising a small child. She lived in a neighborhood away, and we were able to meet Miss Mason and match the 2 women. And really what's happened over the past 20 years is Miss Mason has been able to help Tasha be a good mother. And because Miss Mason knows how you do that,
Yeah,
because
apparently.
she's a great mom. And so that'd be an example of a relationship over the past 20 years where 2 women have gotten to know each other in a very deep, personal way, and where this idea of motherhood and this idea of raising children is kind of at the center of the match, if you will.
Okay, Tom, I just got to say, I'm not sure you can top that.
Well,
you started with what could possibly be the best, incredible, wonderful situation and scenario I can imagine. But anyway, no, you've got other situations.
Well, and I think
that's
and I think to your point, I mean, there's a lot of common sense built into this, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's just kind of
you're right.
it's in some ways it's the idea here is to enliven and amplify what's already alive in our community.
Yeah.
And what's already alive in our community is that people want to find ways to be helpful to one another
Yeah.
and be responsible to one another. But
Yeah.
sometimes we have to, as I say, we have to enliven that a little bit.
Yeah.
Another example I would give is an attorney here in town, Solomon Amuson, who was invited to become a legal guardian on behalf of a man named Nakia, who at the time was living at Georgia Regional Hospital. And so Solomon assumed the role of legal guardian and spokesperson and helped make sure that Nakia would find a place to live here in Savannah after he got out of the regional hospital, that he would find a place to live here in Savannah. And Solomon and his wife, Jo, have maintained friendship and involvement, again, over the past 15 years. And when necessary, spokesmanship and guidance with regard to how the human service system might want to think about Nakia and think about his future. So that would be a guardianship.
Nice.
Where he's
Nice.
assumed that role. Another example of a specific way a person can be an advocate is a man named Richard Lane, who works in the financial planning industry.
Okay.
He has become a representative payee on behalf of a woman that, again, lives a neighborhood away from him, lives close by, but lives on $782 a month, which is her supplemental security income that she receives. And so Richard acts as what I like to call a kitchen table financial manager. And so he goes over to Dolores's house first of the month. They sit down at the kitchen table. They pay the bills. They put a little money into a savings account. They make sure all the paperwork's kind of in good order. And then as the years have rolled by and they've gotten to know each other, Richard, they go grocery shopping together, not every week, but a lot of times they'll grocery shop together and that kind of thing. And then Richard's kind of well known for throwing great parties, and you'll see Dolores at some of the parties. And so that's a match that started out with a really specific role, the idea of a representative payee, kind of a kitchen table financial manager, but then has grown into much more and kind of a warm friendship between the two people.
Wow.
So those would be three examples out of about 100 active matches.
Oh, good stories, man. That's good stuff. That is really good stuff. It really is. Golly. Yeah, it is. You say common sense, and you're absolutely right. But a lot of times, it's the most common sense things that we just don't. We just pass over somehow. We're just not aware of it. We just don't think about it because it requires a little common sense for sure, but a little sort of creative thinking as well. So this is very good stuff. Let me try and clarify a few things that kind of come to my mind and maybe some of our listeners. Number one, so are all of the folks that you're helping in the developmental area, it's in terms of developmental disability. It's not, at least it's not focused, it sounds like, on physical disability. There may be some of that, but that doesn't sound like the focus. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, our mandate is to respond to people who have developmental disabilities. What that's going to usually mean is people who have an intellectual disability, people who have a physical disability, a sensory disability, blindness or deafness. And the disability exists prior to age 21. That's the developmental part. And you might say, well, why that group of people? We would suggest that across time and culture, people with developmental disabilities have usually lived pretty hard lives in most cultures. And so for us, that's a group of people that we think over time, that's a group of people that almost definitionally, the idea of people intentionally noticing, people intentionally welcoming, people intentionally encouraging, people intentionally looking for ways to build solidarity, we think that can't hurt over the long arc of things.
Okay, and here let's make sure about that, because you're talking about in terms of them being defined, as it were, developmentally disabled. You're talking about it occurs prior to the age of 21, I guess you said. You're making that point, but the folks you help, it sounds like, are typically, and correct me if I'm wrong for sure, but are typically going to be adults.
A lot of the people we do recruit advocates for are adults. The reason for that is that when children are inside their families,
they have the family.
They have their families. I would point out, and this is, I mean, when I say interesting, that's a little bit of detached to say it this way. But we do live in a time where this is the first generation of people with developmental disabilities as a generation that will outlive their parents. This is this post World War II baby boom generation of people with disabilities. Okay. First time in the history of the world.
Wow.
Where a generation of people has outlived their parents.
Thought of it that way.
And so
I guess,
so I mean, there are people with developmental disabilities now that are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who 60 years ago wouldn't have lived that long because people had no expectation.
Or certainly would have been institutionalized.
And would have lived shortened lives. And so this idea of aging parents and an adult who's, again, 30, 40, or 50 years old, really not something that there's been that much of until this generation. Yeah. So I guess my point there would be it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for people who are middle-aged people to align themselves with an individual person who's middle-aged, who has a developmental disability, because as parents age and pass away, then that kind of social support and that kind of I know you, you know me, brings both comfort and, quite frankly, brings protection. So for us anyway, it seems like no matter how much you do, there'll always be more to do, is the way it feels.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Good. Well, shoot, we're kind of running low on time. There's so many questions and so many things that could be said about this, and that I'm sure you could elucidate. Let me ask again a couple things that I just want to make sure we get out there. Number one, we gave the website address. Is there a phone number that people can respond to?
Sure. Our office number is 236-5798.
Okay.
And, a lot of times these conversations about citizen advocacy start over a cup of coffee, or they start with somebody going to the website and reading through it, and then reaching out by email and saying, saw your website. Yeah. And then that usually leads to a cup of coffee. And we just get, as I say, we get to know people one at a time. We try to understand what people bring to the table in terms of their gifts, their capabilities, and then we try to think of ways that people can get connected with one another here in Savannah, so that both people give and both people gain.
Okay. And so now that we've given everything else, how about the email address? Is there an easy, convenient email address?
Easy and convenient is not going to be this email address, but I'm happy to give it. And the easiest one is the one that is mine, Tom Kohler, TomKohler, at Savannah Citizen Advocacy.org. Okay. So it's long.
But lots of information on the website, of course. And certainly a phone call is certainly appreciated as well. Now, let me ask you this. Do you guys do some sort of fundraising event? Or I know you are always open to good-hearted folks and or corporate entities who want to donate, for sure, but do you have any sort of event or anything of that nature?
We raise money the old-fashioned way. Just to say it, we go out, we visit with people and share the story and raise money face-to-face is really our strong suit, if you will. Yeah. We do have an oyster roast the weekend between the last NFL playoff game and the Super Bowl. There's one weekend right there. There's one weekend that is still left for America, if you're not watching football. And we do an oyster roast out on Isle of Hope that weekend, and that's been a great fundraiser for us.
So early in the year,
it's like the last weekend of January, first weekend in February. It depends on how it plays out. Yeah.
All right. Well, heck, maybe I'll get you back here right before that. Would be not some bad timing if you want to come back at some point.
Sure.
Okay. Any last shot here? There's so much good information. I know we could go on and on and on. I think we've at least hit the high points. You've presented the information very nicely, which I appreciate. You've made my job very easy. What's kind of the wrap up here, the nutshell you want to give on this thing as we sort of move into the very final segment, Tom?
I would just, I was in Wisconsin last week doing a little bit of work, and one of the things that I heard, which I thought was a great way to think about things, is somebody talked about the idea of relationship ghettos. And I had never heard that phrase before, relationship ghetto. And what they were saying was that most of us spend most of our time with people that remind us of ourselves. Yeah. And they were saying there's nothing, quote, wrong with that, but it may not be good enough for America right now. It's an
interesting
concept,
right. Interesting way to put it.
Yeah. So that we're all in relationship ghettos, that we spend most of our time with people that remind us of ourselves. When I thought about that, I thought, that sounds pretty true. Yeah. So I do think that citizen advocacy is a way to help people climb out of their relationship ghettos a bit. Meet somebody whose life experience is going to probably be different than your own.
Yeah, for sure, I would think.
Try to begin to see the world through that person's eyes. And as you do, you may begin to see the world in general in a little bit different way.
Nice.
And we may be, again, in a time in America right now where that might be a good thing for all of us to try to do, is to try to be present to someone that doesn't remind us of ourselves. Yeah. Look at the world through their eyes and see how that helps us think about the world in a little bit different way.
Very nice. I agree. A little empathy creation, a little empathy kind of building exercise in one sense, or relationship. Not just exercise. That sounds a little off, but yeah, I agree with that whole idea. That's a very nice idea. I'm going to study on that. I like that very much, just in general, and certainly as relates to your particular enterprise here. Well, Tom, I appreciate it so much, and again, hopefully we'll get you back at some point, and it's been a very good, interesting conversation, as I knew it would be, and I hope that the individuals listening will, at least a few of y'all might check in on this, and if you feel so inclined, and look into this a little bit. It's certainly a laudable organization and good work that Tom and the crew do. And I'll say I'm a fan, for sure, at least. And I'm sure others who have listened to you today, you've got some new fans there as well, for some who might not be aware of you. Okay, guys, we are going to break away again just for the final segment. And again, won't be going long. I do have some announcements I want to make, some notations of things going on in this fine city and all of that sort of stuff. So hang with me, and I'll be back very soon. Hold on. And I'm back. I am back. All right, guys, the final segment here, Savannah Lexicon. Hope you have enjoyed the discussion here this morning with Tom Kohler. Very, very interesting stuff and enlightening in a number of ways, and something I'm certainly going to look into more myself. I want to let you know, first off, very briefly, that following me is a wonderful syndicated show, Background Briefing, with Ian Masters, a sharp investigative journalist, and he does a wonderful show right after me. Right after him at 10 o'clock is the indomitable Amy Goodman with Democracy Now! That comes on at 10. So couple of good shows following me, as well as, great shows all the way through. Great music 24 hours a day. We've got a slew of new hosted shows, both music formats and talk shows. So if you haven't checked us out recently, aside from my show, do so, because go to the website, wruu.org. Just all kinds of good new stuff going on, and we are excited to be producing and bringing up such a bunch of new good stuff. All right, I want to make you aware of various things going on in the city, as I am wont to do here on my show. And one thing I want you to be aware of here this evening, as a matter of fact, at the Maddie Heritage Center at 6:30 p.m., there's a lecture, The New Humanism. And I am going to apologize in front in case I get this gentleman's name wrong, but Christian Sotil, I believe that's correct, is professor of architecture and urban design at SCAD, and he's going to have a talk. I always kind of hate that term lecture, but at any rate, he's going to have a talk. How about that? About the art and science of urban design. And that is certainly important in any context, but certainly important in Savannah's context, and certainly at this time as we are doing so much planning at the city and county level, mostly at the city level. 6:30 p.m., Massey Heritage Center, and 912-395-5070 if you want to call in about it. Starting tomorrow, Friday the 30th, we've got the Blues, Jazz, and Barbecue celebration that's going to be going on. It's actually going to be starting tomorrow and go all the way through July 2nd. That's on River Street. All sorts of good food and music and arts and crafts and all that good stuff. So again, that'll go all the way through the 2nd. Richmond Hill has its Independence Day celebration actually on Saturday the 1st. So they get a jump start on the old Independence Day. And by the way, my guest on Independence Day, because I am going to be doing the show right here on Independence Day, and I'm going to have the interim director at the history department at Armstrong State University, interim head of the department, Dr. Christopher Hendricks, from the Department of History, Armstrong State University. He is a Revolutionary America and Colonial America scholar, and we're going to talk about the Declaration of Independence. All right, so that's what better way to get your Independence Day started off is remembering what it's kind of really all about. It ain't all just about beer and barbecue and fireworks, although that's great because we certainly ought to celebrate it for sure. All right, also Southern Family Festival is happening in Daffin Park on Saturday, 1 p.m. That's a free celebration there. Okay, Monday we sort of start the 4th of July celebration in earnest on River Street, 4th of July entertainment on River Street starting Monday from 4 to 11 p.m. Tuesday, of course, is the big day. So we got the 4th of July fireworks on the river starting at 10 a.m., going all the way to 11 p.m. We've got the Tybee Island fireworks as well. That's going to be on Tybee's beaches out there, 9:15 p.m. at the Tiber Pier Pavilion. Probably can see the fireworks from here. We've got other stuff, too, that you ought to know about. I'm jumping around on the dates a little bit, but tomorrow is the Next Generation's Summer Soiree out at Savannah Yacht Club, and that is benefits go to a certainly Okay, the benefits certainly go to a worthwhile cause, I'm trying to say, which is the Kids Only campaign at the Dwayne and Cynthia Willett Children's Hospital of Savannah. Now, that is not a free event, of course, as it is a fundraiser, but that is a worthwhile cause. A phone number, 912-350-6369. Then on, let's see, on Saturday we mentioned the holiday festival in Daffin Park. So there is that going on as well. Let me see if there's anything else I've missed. There seems like there was something. What was it? Okay, also this Saturday, the Oglethorpe Driving Club has a Bethesda Academy fundraiser. And that is going to be at the monthly Coffee and Cars meeting at Bethesda Academy, 7 to 11 a.m. And they're going to have classic, vintage, and exotic cars out there as well. Donations will be gratefully accepted, no doubt. So that's some of the stuff that is going on that I did want to talk about and make sure I at least got out there. But I also want to, again, remind you of some more guests coming your way on Savannah Lexicon. As I mentioned, Independence Day next Tuesday, Dr. Christopher Hendricks, interim head of the Department of History, Armstrong State University. We're going to talk about the Declaration of Independence and talk about the culture and political scenario of the times at that time. That's going to be interesting. We'll probably even read some of the heralded document itself. Next Thursday, I'm going to have District 3 Alderman John Hall. We'll talk about issues of particular concern to his constituency in District 3, but obviously that's also going to be a number of issues that are of interest and concern to anybody who's living in the city. Followed on the 11th, the following Tuesday, a week after Independence Day, I will have Reverend Chester Ellis, the president of the historic Carver Village Neighborhood Association. So we want to I'm doing a series, as those of you who listen regularly know, of bringing in some neighborhood associations and get the scoop from these folks who are living in this area and see what major concerns they have. And I'm trying to get a variety, shall we say, of neighborhoods involved. And so historic Carver Village neighborhood on the 11th. The Thursday, on the 13th, I'll have Daniel Carey back from Historic Savannah Foundation. He will be one of my few returning guests so far. I think he's either the second or third returning guest I ever had. So we try to. There's so much going on in this city that it's hard to get back to even the good people. So but he's coming back, and certainly much to say these days about the whole issue of density, of spreading out, of the planning going on, and all of this kind of stuff. So that will be an interesting one as well. On the 18th. As yet unfilled, but I assure you there will be someone coming. And I'll let you know on my Facebook page and through WRUU who that will be. On the 20th, we're going to have Steve Willis, president of the board of directors for the Center for a Sustainable Coast. The 25th, just to move on forward, Michael Tucker, executive director of WorkSource Coastal. And on the 27th, Bill Durrance, the alderman here for District 2. So got some good stuff coming for you, and I do hope that you will be listening. And again, remind you that you are listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. And I do very much encourage you to just keep listening, because as I mentioned, here at 9 o'clock in just a moment, we are going to have a fine show coming your way with Ian Masters and here it goes.